And welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And as always, thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, I have the pleasure of having someone who's been here before, and she has been kind enough to accept my invitation to come back and be with us. So I think that you'll enjoy getting to know her again. Her name is Karen Isaacs. She's a theater critic and journalist, and she's with Shore Publications and Zippo6.com. And Karen, I'd like to thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for asking me. It's always a pleasure.
You were here before, so it's nice for you to take the time to be here back with us again. But the viewer is probably saying, I need a refresh. Who is this wonderful woman? Tell us about her backstory. Tell us about yourself.
I'll try and make it very brief. I've been attending theater since I was 4. Fell in love with it. I was one of those kids that saved my allowance and went to New York City. I grew up in Fairfield County to see shows. I had a career in public relations, marketing, and then teaching at the college level. And in the process, became a theater critic and theater journalist. So that condenses it down to a minute or two.
Now, here's your theater upbringing of your love of theater, and then you went into corporate America and nonprofit.
Yes.
You had mentioned, and then to theater critic and journalism. How did that come about?
It came about in 2 ways. The first was a long, long time ago when I was just starting my career, and one of my first jobs was working on a weekly newspaper, sort of like Shore Publications papers, but in a different part of Connecticut. And every so often I would be asked to cover a show at one of the area theaters in that area. So I started doing some reviews very early. Then there was a sort of gap. And when my husband and I married, he was already a theater critic. And we talked theater a lot, and then I would sometimes do a show that he couldn't get to, and it just sort of evolved.
Did you find in the path that you were moving along that theater was your love? Did you look at film, television, or anything else?
Theater is my love. It's my love. Live theater, there's something about the audience and the fact that the audience is reacting and that the performers are there in real time, and it can change. I saw South Pacific at good speed on its press opening, and I had a certain view of it. And then near the end of its run, I brought my brother to see it as a birthday present. And I noticed things I hadn't noticed before, and I noticed some changes. So that it's live. It's always different.
Now, you're mentioning press passes. Tell us how it is that you go to theater in your role as a theater critic.
As a theater critic, I am fortunate enough that the theaters will give me tickets to see shows, and they usually will send out an email invitation saying, in New York City, what they usually do is they send out an invitation, say, we would like you to come one of these nights or one of these performances, and you respond and ask for the performance you'd like, and if you're lucky, they have that available and they confirm. And that's how I get booking here in Connecticut. There's often a little more flexibility as to what day or whatever, but there's usually, they want to have you come early in the run so that you can get your review and get it out there so other people can see it and make decisions about possibly attending the show.
What made you decide to become a theater critic?
If to make a joke, it's to support my habit of loving to go to theater.
Oh, there you go.
But I think I am a born teacher, and theater, any sort of criticism is partly teaching.
People will probably say, I'm a theater critic, I'd like to be a theater critic, I don't know how to become a theater critic. What's your recommendation to get started?
One thing is that the Connecticut Critics Circle, which is an organization that's been around for 30 plus years of critics in Connecticut, and I'm a member, have a mentor program where they will, you can apply for that, and then you are, if we accept you as a mentee, you're paired up with one of our members, and we notify the theaters that you are part of the organization. So the theaters will start sending you information and invitations. Right now I am mentoring a young 20-something gentleman from mid-state Connecticut, and it's been a it's been a really interesting experience.
What is it that a theater critic does?
You ask 5 theater critics and you will get 5 different answers.
Oh, there you go, okay.
So I try and explain it as my way. I think a theater critic has a couple of obligations: to provide some guidance to the public about what to see or how to look at things that they do see, to give them enough information so that they can judge whether they think this is the type of show they would enjoy, or that it intrigues them enough that they'll go a little bit outside their comfort zone. And also to put the show in a context of what theater is, what it's doing, what its role is, how it's produced, what is involved in it. Depending on the show, that may be more or less.
How long have you been pursuing being a theater critic?
30 plus years, I think.
I see.
So it's been a long time.
Okay. And what is your guideline for the year? You had mentioned 60, 80, 100 plays that you go to a year?
It varies. It's someplace in that number. It depends on what's happening in Connecticut, what's happening in New York that I want to take the time to go and see, because from New Haven to go into New York and see a show is, you're basically committing 7 to 8 hours minimum between transportation and seeing the show. And in New York, sometimes it's, am I interested? Is this a show that I might buy a ticket to if I had to do that?
New York and Connecticut, you're going mostly to Broadway and off-Broadway?
I do some off-Broadway. There are literally hundreds of shows every year off-Broadway and off-Broadway and, everywhere else. I tend to focus on a few of the major off-Broadway theater companies, such as the Irish Repertory Theater or Classic Stage Company, and there are some others that do have a season, often do very good work. And I will, pay attention to what they're doing and see if I would like to attend.
How about the Connecticut theaters? Where do you like to go?
Oh, I'm not going to fall into the trap of saying which theaters I particularly like to go to. I obviously have some that I've been going to for a long time, but I like to, and I will honestly say every professional theater company here in Connecticut, I have seen some excellent work and some really terrific performances or really fascinating plays.
What are some of the plays that you like to go to?
I'm open to most types of plays, whether it be a mystery or a drama or a comedy or a musical. I'm not. Sometimes it's more the subject matter than necessarily the type of production it is.
We are both members of the League of Professional Theater Women. How did you get involved with them?
Well, I got involved with them actually through a friend of a theater friend, a woman who's been at Goodspeed for many, many years, Mary Miko.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Mary Miko and I performed together back when she was in college and I was relatively recent graduate of college, and we performed together in Bridgeport. And then later in her career, she has been at Goodspeed for many, many years in a number of executive administrative positions. And she said, "You really should belong to this." And I said, "Okay, sounds good, let me know. Send me the information, I'll fill out the form," and I joined.
You're mentioning performing. What happened? What did you do back then?
Back then, Mary and I were both involved at a cabaret, sort of reviews. I did it while I was working full time. I did it for a couple of years, enjoyed it, but it did become exhausting. You can't rehearse till 2 o'clock in the morning and then get up to be in an office at 8:30.
It's true. Were you an actor then?
I was, these were musical reviews, so mainly it was singing, but yes.
Did you think that that was going to be your pathway as you were aging, that you would stay as a performer?
It's interesting, I have gone back to performing. For a long time in my life, between working and going to the theater and doing theater criticism, there really wasn't time to devote to performing or, particularly rehearsing periods, etc. It was the same issue. Rehearse till 11 and get up for an 8:30 office.
Sure.
But now that I have slowed down, I am somewhat retired. I have been in the last about 10 years been working and doing some cabaret performing, and I am still studying voice and regaining the fact that I've always loved music. It's a major part of my life.
Let's come back and talk about that, but I'm going to take a break.
Okay.
I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
As a scientist, I know by the time she takes her first breath, 9 billion more tons of carbon pollution will be in the air. When she takes her first steps, wildfires will have burned millions more acres she could have explored. By the time a child born today goes to college, it may be too late to leave them the world we promised. Our window to act on climate change is like watching them grow up. We blink and we miss it.
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and I hope you're enjoying the show. My conversation continues on with Karen Isaacs. And Karen, we were talking about your singing and performing, and you're still doing voice lessons and things like that. Is that a part of your life besides being a theater critic?
Absolutely. I grew up with music in my household. I come from a very, very musical family, and music is, I guess, a passion. I love to sing, and I've never done as much performing as I perhaps would like to, but I think I have found in the cabaret format a format that is flexible enough to fit what I can do in my life or work into my life.
Are you performing at venues now in a cabaret environment?
Not as much in a venue. I've been taking a variety of workshops, and the most recent ones have been at Neighborhood Music School in New Haven, and we do, at the end of each term, the class does a performance in a real cabaret setting, tables and chairs and wine
Oh,
and
nice.
everything. And that sort of somewhat limited that's been my performing. I would love to perform more, but that's been a good outlet.
Let's talk about your blog. I know that people might want to go and read what you have written there.
All right, there are a couple of ways to see what I write. Shore Publications focuses on certain theaters. They do not cover all of the theaters in Connecticut. They do not cover New York theater. So they get reviews for about 6 theaters in Connecticut that they want to cover. Any theater in Connecticut that I write a review for is posted on the Connecticut Critics Circle blog, and that's ctcritics.org. And what's fascinating about that is other critics who are members post, so you can see a variety of views on the same show. And you will realize that sometimes they are diametrically opposed. That a show that I will love, somebody else will think needed a lot of improvement. I have my own blog, 2 on the Aisle, and it's the number 2, at wordpress.com. And that's where I post everything I do. And I even have, I do send a lot of material to BerkshireFineArts.com, which is although it has the name Berkshires in it, it actually covers art, music, dance, symphonies, etc., theater throughout the country.
Oh, nice.
And so you will see reviews from a production in Florida or whatever. But my reviews are posted there as well.
You have something in your lap. Why don't you tell us what you have?
Well, just to remind myself of what's coming up, I sort of brought a little, what I call a cheat sheet of some of the shows that, are coming up in New York and in Connecticut in the upcoming months that people, that I'm interested in or that people might be interested in.
Please share.
Right now there are 2 shows running here nearby. In Brantford, there is a world premiere musical called Love Affair. And at Ivoryton, there's Escape to Margaritaville, which if you love Jimmy Buffett music, you will enjoy. It was a fun show. But I'm very interested in the next show at Goodspeed. It's called Maggie.
Yes.
It's a brand new show, written. The music is by a singer-songwriter, Johnny Reed, who I quite honestly know nothing about. But having done a little research, he has written for Tina Turner, he has written for Rod Stewart, he has had best-selling CDs on his own. And it just looks like a very interesting story, a heartwarming story. It's based on his grandmother, who was left with 3 small children to raise in Scotland when her husband, I believe, was killed in a mine accident in the 50s, and who, in this time of a lot of economic and social changes in Scotland, raised these 3 young men. And I heard one of the songs, and it was lovely, and I think it fascinates me, and I'm so proud that Goodspeed is doing on its main stage a new musical, which is very risky because they need to fill the seats, and obviously Maggie doesn't have any name recognition, big stars, and so I hope people will give it a chance. It opens in a week for previews.
Okay.
And runs through the end of October or mid-October.
Okay.
So that one is one that I'm very interested in. A couple of others that are coming up. Some I don't know a lot about, but I just know their titles. But down in Norwalk, they're doing Masterclass, which is a play that's been around for a while. It's a wonderful play about a Maria Callas-like opera singer giving a master class to 4 young, aspiring opera singers. and it's a very good play, and I'm sure they will do a good job with it. That's at MTC in Norwalk. And probably another one that a lot of people are going to want to see is the Neil Diamond musical, A Beautiful Noise, is going to be at the Bushnell at the beginning of October, starring Connecticut's own Nick Fratiani, and who took over the role from the first person to play it on Broadway, and played it on Broadway for a number of years, and a number of months, and he is now out on the national tour. And that's one that is, I know people are going to want to see it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Because of Nick and because of the Neil Diamond. It's sort of a biography, but it includes all his music.
When you are talking with theater goers, what is the sentiment that's out there of the theater that people like to see?
I think for a while there, after the pandemic, it was really a desire on the most part to see things that felt uplifting or light or joyous or laugh. I think now we can deal with a few more serious issues and deal with them, and people are going to be responsive. But theaters are still having great difficulty. My colleague, Frank Rizzo, I've done articles, but he most recently did an article on the fact that in Connecticut, the theaters are still having problems. Partly it was the COVID that changed people's habits. So attendance is still down. Subscriptions are still down. Shows people have gotten out of the habit of, okay, I'm going to see every show. I'm going to buy a subscription and see every show at Hartford Stage this season. They're saying, I'll pick and choose. And what happens, which isn't unusual, because I know it happens to me, is I say, oh, yeah, I'd like to go see that, but somehow I never quite get around to buying a ticket, or it never seems like the ideal night to go. So people say, oh, I'll buy a ticket for this show that I want to see, but they don't always end up doing that.
What are some of the solutions that you would think that theaters need to do to bring a new audience or the audience back?
I wish I had great answers because I don't. I think doing a show like Maggie at good speed, which I think because of the type of music should, I hope, appeal to a different audience. As someone once did point out, is that theater audiences, like audiences at symphonies and operas and ballets, have traditionally been older audiences. They've traditionally been those people, sort of 50 and up, who, don't have all of the responsibilities of child rearing and all those obligations, and perhaps have a little more disposable income. But that's not enough now to keep theater alive. And I'm nervous that we may see some venerable and excellent theaters in Connecticut go under in the next couple of years if things don't pick up.
Well, we are starting to slowly run out of time.
Okay.
What are some of your closing thoughts for the viewers?
The thing I always say, please go to theater. There is nothing like seeing a live performance, and Connecticut has some of the most outstanding theater in the country. Take advantage of it. Many of them have, discounts for college students or preview nights. Check websites, take advantage. Take your children. I took my grandchildren, by the time they were 7, I think or 8 was when I started taking them to full-length productions. Support them, because otherwise we're going to lose this part of Connecticut.
Are you finding that there are smaller audiences when you go to the theater, or are they packed?
It varies. What has happened in Connecticut is that many of the theaters have shortened their run. Even Goodspeed went from like 11 weeks to 8 weeks. So they're running less, but, and the audiences, therefore, they're sort of condensing the audiences. But it would be great if they could go back to what they had been doing.
Well, I want to thank you for coming. We have run out of time, so thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm always delighted.
Good. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned in Arts and Entertainment. In case you need to reach me, I'm at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you have a super day today. Thank you so very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll see you next time.